Hey everybody, my name is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Marcus Talks About Games. This is the show that never ends. It just goes on and on, my friends. At least as long as there are video games to chat about. Thankfully, we have video games to chat about. So with that said, here's what I'm playing. Metro Exodus. That's right, I've been riding down the metro. The third installment in the Metro series, based off the series of books. Or is it a series, or is it just one book? I think the book is Metro 2034. I feel like it's more than one book. I don't know. But yeah, it's based off a book, Russian author, and it released on February 15th, the day of 1,000 video game launches. I'm about 3 hours in. 3 hours in sounds about right. And so far, I'm enjoying myself. I'm a fan of those first two games. I think that they're a really cool blend of kind of narrative first-person shooting with survival mechanics. I don't think they're for everyone. The system, it can be a little bit hardcore, and some interesting systems that some might deem tedious, like the having to wipe your gas mask to clean it of dirt, and changing out your filters when you're out in the radiated world. But I think they're really cool games with a really cool take on a post-apocalyptic universe. This third game, you're still controlling Artyom. Artyom? I always wonder if I'm saying his name right without a Russian accent. If it's Artyom, yeah, who was the protagonist of the first two games. This takes place, I'm not sure how long after Last Light, but follows the events of that game. And right off the back, I think it's got a pretty cool premise or hook of, and this isn't a spoiler, just so you know, because it's kind of out there, or has been out there. But basically, you find out that because the entire premise of this series has been that you are the last remnants of humanity in Moscow or Russia, and because the world has been bombed out from nuclear war, people that survive have to live in the underground metro train tunnels, hence the Metro name, and that's pretty much where society is now, is in those tunnels. And for the longest time, you've always operated under the belief that you were the only people left alive. Until now with Exodus, where you finally come in contact with people on the outside, and you find out that turns out there are more people alive, not just in Russia, but maybe around the world than you thought. So you decide to take a trip to see if you can come in contact with said people. That's the very general premise of the game. And I think that's an intriguing hook. I think that's a nice twist because, it took what you thought was the kind of the state of the world, like, which basically took what you thought you knew about this series and said, like, oh no, actually, turns out there was something here all along. And I think that the kind of reveal of that is relatively well done. The game has a really different structure where you have a train called the Aurora, and you, along with with Anna, your wife, who was in the previous game, and like a merry band of your comrades and your little squad, you're riding this train around to different just areas, and you stop in an area. It's like a big hub world, and they've got like main mission objectives and side missions that you can go on, and just different points of interest to explore. And you do everything that you want to do there, and then you kind of move on. It's kind of like, even though I've never played this game, it reminds me a bit of The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. Big train. It's kind of your main hub of operations and your movement, and you're just kind of going on a fixed point to different locations. At least that was my understanding of how Spirit Tracks work. I haven't played it. So far, I've only gotten to like the first location. I'm like halfway done exploring that area. And I think that it's cool. Like, it's an excuse to kind of see some new areas. The people that you're with, so far, okay. I think that Red Dead Redemption 2 has really set the bar when it comes to establishing a fully fleshed out party that you actually want to hang around and get to know these characters and listen to whatever they have to say. Metro seems to be going for a very similar vibe, where a lot of times you have down moments on the train or around the train when you're stopped, and you can just go up to your random squad and they'll chit chat with you about stuff. The big difference, of course, is that Artyom is a silent character, so it's a one-way conversation, so it's not as engaging as listening to those conversations in Red Dead 2. And also, like, at least so far, I'm still getting to know my squad, but the personalities aren't very distinct among the party members. Like, they all just kind of bleed together as like another Russian guy, except for the one American guy that's in your party. It's like, oh yeah, the one Russian guy that's in the front of the train, and then the other Russian guy who's in the back of the train. That's kind of how I'm designating them. I don't even know any of their names yet. And they keep you for a while. They'll just talk to you about random stuff. But so far, I'm just not. I want to be interested in it because I like, like getting that stuff in video games, like those little tidbits of lore and getting to know my kit, my team, my posse, my crew. But so far, it just is, they aren't grabbing me enough. And I want to leave these conversations, but then like there's the part of me that wants to hear this stuff, so I have to stay. It's much like for me at least, when you get into a conversation with like a stranger that maybe you don't want to be in or be in for very long, so they'll talk to you for a while and you're just listening and being polite, and then you think that they're done and you'll go to leave, but then they'll keep talking and then you have to stay. That's how the dialogue works in this game, because there are a lot of awkward pauses, which is another thing that kind of pulls me out of the moment. Is the dialogue can be a little stilted, and that characters will say something and then take too long to respond. So they come off as more robotic than natural, even if the things they're saying might actually be interesting. But yeah, like there are a lot of times where a character will be talking to me and I'm like, okay, is he done? Because I kind of want to go. And then he keeps going. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I should stay and listen to this guy because, maybe he'll say something that makes me want to like him or want to, be invested in whatever his little origin story is, whatever you want to call it. And then they'll just keep going, and then I'm just kind of looking around like, all right, smile and nod. Like, it's for me as a guy that's really terrible at making small talk with strangers a lot of the time. I'm getting that same sense of kind of like almost like mild anxiety of like, oh my God, you're still going, huh? All right, like I guess I'll stand here for a bit awkwardly and just kind of take in what you're saying and try to care about it. So yeah, I hope that the party gets more interesting, because that seems to be that's going to be a big part of this game. I recruited a new member recently, or two new members technically, and they seem to be, a little bit more, I guess, engaging a little bit. So I'll see how that goes. The gameplay still feels a lot the same, I'm wiping my mask, I'm switching my filters, I'm still watching my bullet count because resources are more scarce here than in a traditional first-person shooter game. There's crafting, so you're always going around scrounging up stuff, much like, I guess, like a Fallout, I guess particularly Fallout 4, and, just opening lockers and little bins and just whatever you can find so that you can make more ammo and health kits and what have you. That stuff, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I'm the biggest dumpster diver when it comes to video games. Like, I'll dig everywhere to find crap, and I just get a base satisfaction from that kind of stuff. The actual shooting so far feels fine, like it's serviceable, but I don't know. And it's been a while since I've played those first two games. Even though I didn't play them at the time that they released, I played them actually in that the Redux collection for this generation. So I didn't play Metro 2033 and Last Light for last gen when they came out. I played them this gen a few years ago, kind of back to back, and I can't even remember if the shooting felt similar than this, but like there's a sluggishness to combat that makes fighting things, especially like fast moving things, like a lot of like creatures, kind of not as enjoyable as I would like it to be. Like, I got into a fight with a bunch of like zombie-ish creatures and was just shooting them down, and the bullets don't, like, the impact doesn't feel as much weight as I would like. And it just doesn't feel as snappy as I would like it to be. And I get that some of that has to do with the kind of more what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. The more deliberateness to combat, like sometimes your gun will jam because you got crappy weapons that you have to clean to upkeep. Again, a little bit like Red Dead. So sometimes you'll just be constantly hitting your gun during combat, and I guess to build tension. But yeah, it just generally has a slower pace that I wouldn't mind if the combat just had a bit more weight and snap to it a bit. But again, it's still serviceable. The game graphically is gorgeous. I'm actually playing on my new Xbox One X, which came in the mail this week, and I've had a chance to tinker around with that. Looks great on that. Runs fine so far. The environments look super detailed and just have a it's really hard to call like games like this or like a Fallout like pretty, because everything's destroyed and sometimes everything just looks dirty and grimy. But this is like a pretty dirty and grimy. Like the weather effects look nice, the snow, and even just the art design. Like I found like this church that had a really cool look to it, and like like the kind of bombed out villages. Like it's weird, like some people can do post-apocalyptic settings and make the ruins of whatever the civilization was look cool, as well as the like makeshift structures that the people who survive make look interesting. Like something like the opposite of this would be like Near Automata, or Automata, however the hell you pronounce it, which I think is a great game overall, but one of the weaker aspects is its environment design is really kind of bland, with the exception of very few locations. But like when you're in that general overworld, if you play the game, you just see really generic, just bombed out buildings that have like no personality at all. It's like the bare minimum of like, hey, we need a post-apocalyptic setting. I don't know, just put what if you put a building here that's just square and it's got some square holes that used to be windows, and then like the top half of it is gone because explosions. And yeah, I don't know, maybe put some dirt in there because nature came back. I don't know, call it a day. Post-apocalyptic. It's like, okay, like yeah, I get what you're saying, but that's about it. This game, much like what's another good post-apocalyptic game that still looks really cool? Actually, Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that's a fantastic example. That game, I actually want to explore all those ruins because it just the art design and the detail and the way things are laid out, it's just visually interesting. Like they tell a story of like, okay, what was this place like? How was the devastation here compared to the last place I visited? Metro so far has that aspect of it, especially in the area I'm in, because it's like on the water, so it's like a marsh. It's weird to say marshland because it's like in the dead of winter, but it's like half water and half not water, half land. So it's got like I can explore in a boat, or I can just kind of hopscotch my way across just different bridges to get to different land masses. But I like I said, like it just looks interesting and super cool. But yeah, I'm excited to keep playing more of it. I enjoy those first two games. Like I said, I enjoy this. I've gotten really into survival games in the last couple years or so. I think it's fun to have that challenge of conserving ammo and deciding if I want to go guns blazing against something or just sneak by things and try to save up as much as I can, which you can do in this game. I just hope that the story continues to kind of hook me beyond the premise, again, that I think is a strong one, and that the characters that you pick up along the way just become more interesting. 'Cause I would love to have another party that sucks me into their drama like Red Dead Redemption 2's party. Another game that came out that I'm playing for Xbox that same day is Crackdown 3. Now, I've said this on the show before, I've never played Crackdown back in the day, never played Crackdown 2. I only started playing Crackdown 1 very recently, as in the past week, just so I could have a point of reference for Crackdown 3, just so I can compare the controls and just, see how it stacks up. So I played a couple hours of Crackdown 1, killed like 2 bosses, and just was running around, just running amok and being a bigger problem than the gangs inhabiting the city. And it was crazy because as soon as I fired up Crackdown 3 and just got my hands and run around and stuff, I was amazed at how similar it controls to Crackdown 1. And not even just like, oh, this button is mapped to the same place, but it feels like Crackdown 1 to the point where, and I've heard other people say this, and I think it's a very accurate comparison or observation, is that it feels like they've almost remastered Crackdown 1 and just slapped a 3 on it. And it's like, yeah, that's actually, that's what this feels like, especially going from one to the other immediately. Like, I was like, oh, wow, like, there's a couple new things here, but other than that, yeah, I'm just kind of doing what I was doing in that last game, and even, like, the physics feel very similar, which is, I guess, is good in terms of just, it's been a long time since Crackdown 1, and a lot of people have fond memories of it, so I definitely get the idea of giving them what they remember and what they're familiar with. And I remember hearing, because again, I didn't start this game until I was waiting for my 1X to come in the mail. So I didn't play it launch day. I played it a few days afterwards. I think I started playing it Tuesday or Wednesday. And in between that time, I was hearing just the general reactions critically were not fantastic. Like people kind of either were down on it or just saying it's okay. So I even before that, I had very, very measured expectations. One, I didn't have any expectations like in terms of like, will this be better than those first two games? Because again, I never played them. But just given the development history and just the hoops that the game jumped through to get to release, I was like, I don't know. Like, you know, some games can have rocky development cycles and still turn out pretty good. I think that Final Fantasy 15 is an example of that. Despite the problems that game has, I think overall it's a quality game. So it's like maybe it'll be one of those, but I don't have my hopes up. But I fired it up, and I honestly I want to say like the first half hour, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, I was pretty unimpressed. I was like, oh, okay, this feels like Crackdown 1, but oh boy, like I don't know, like it just, I don't know, like the intro, like, you know, it retains the series kind of like silliness, and, you know, it's got the narrator, it's got just that ridiculousn's of it. It's just now you have Terry Crews in there, yelling at you and being Terry Crews, which is fine. I like Terry Crews, and that's who I'm playing as. I see no reason to play as any other character that's not Terry Crews, frankly. But I don't know, like, I just felt like, at first I just didn't like the idea of like, this just feels like a game from like 10, 12 years ago. And I don't know if there's much to do in this world. The weapons, at least the early combat, wasn't really all that impressive to me. I was like, oh, this is pretty simplistic. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. And then I don't know why, like I stopped playing that first session, you know, just went on to do other stuff, and then came back to it the next day, determined like, okay, I want to play like a couple of hours of this straight, just to relay. I want to get to the point where like a lot of the systems have opened up and I can just have complete free reign to just do whatever. And I gotta say, to my shock, I have grown to enjoy this game quite a bit, and I think I don't even know if I'm entirely sure why. I have some ideas why, but as I was going around, you know, the basic structure of the game it's pretty similar to the first game of, you know, you've got a main bad guy that you got to take. It's this lady that runs this futuristic city that I think is in South Korea or North Korea, one of the Koreas, I think. And, you know, she's basically has this stranglehold in this city, and you hook up with this woman who's part of this resistance, and she's kind of in your ear, along with the your boss, who's like the narrator guy. And you got to take her down by first taking down all of her different, like, underlings, her main generals, basically, who have their hands in different facets of the city's infrastructure. And the way you take them down is that you first have to wipe out the industry or whatever their thing is that their job is. So you have the guy that runs like the machine factories. He like has like a quarry. There's a quarry in the city, and he's running that area. If you take all those out, there's an AI that is a boss that controls the city's monorail system. You got to take those over to fight that person, or not even person, machine, and so on and so forth. And again, like, it's, you know, there's orbs everywhere, agility orbs. You're jumping around, still climbing and getting those, along with just all the other orbs. You're still got the little hub on the side that tells you where your individual skills are at and how close you are. So, like, you know, the more things you punch, your punching and melee increases. The more things you shoot, your shooting increases, and so on and so forth. If you play the Crackdown games, none of this is new. But it's really, really fun to me. And it is an arcade-ass video game, and I think that I like that about it. Like, it is the most, like, throwback, just straight up, just video gamey, super just dumb thing that it's scratching an itch right now that I'm not even sure that I didn't even know that I had, frankly. Where I just, like I've played so many open world games just in my life, but especially in the last, like, even going back to like the last 2 years, like there have been so many big open world games, a lot of big open world games that have advanced the genre. Like Breath of the Wild, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Red Dead 2, and so many others, Horizon, that are all fantastic, but uh there's a like they've taken so many steps in immersion in terms of maybe eliminating icons on the map and making it more about like exploring the world and taking in your surroundings more so than just looking at a map and just saying like, well, I guess I'll go to there next and wipe, clear this icon and going to the next. Even Assassin's Creed, which is still very much that kind of game, but they've taken steps to kind of reduce that a bit by just making their open worlds more interesting. At least for me, like in Origins, I like riding around and just finding stuff, even though like the mini map is populated with just little dots of things to go to. But for this game, it's like an old sandbox game of like, I'm just looking at the map and saying like, oh, there's like a stronghold here, I'm gonna mark it, and then like Incredible Hulk jump my way there and shoot all the bad guys that are there and move on. But it's satisfying to do that right now. I don't know why. It's such an anomaly where like I feel like I should be crapping all over this game for being so dated in that design, but playing Crackdown 3, it's a lot like eating crappy candy, like bad junk food. Like what's a terrible junk food that you can't help but eat? It's like like Smarties, maybe. Smarties, sure, we'll go with that. Where Smarties are, at least to me, I'm going to consider them the best candy. They're fine, and like, I would never pay money for Smarties, but if you put a bowl of Smarties in front of me, I'm going to eat them and have a general good time doing so, even though I fully acknowledge that it's really not that great of a candy, and there's a ton of different candies I'd rather be eating if I had the choice. But I also can't ignore that I'm having like a base level of enjoyment eating these Smarties. And I guess that's what Crackdown 3 is kind of. It's like, oh, I know there's things that are really dated about this game and it's not great, and there's other games like this that are better, but I'm still having a good time with this. Maybe it's because it's so unlike those games that I mentioned before. Like, it's so unlike modern shooters that it's a fun little throwback of like, you know what? I just want to go around and just like, I like clearing out those icons, and I think that the progression system is really satisfying because everything I do, feeds into those upgrades for your enhancements, your abilities, and also works towards getting that boss. Like there's a little progress meter of like, oh, you cleared out this thing, now you've got 15% more intel on this boss, and then once you get 100%, you can go face them. And I think you can, as far as I can tell, like I think you can face them anytime you want, but it'll be harder to do that unless you take down their businesses or whatever. And everything when you look at them on the map, it gives you like a probability of like success. So you'll see like, hey, like if you face this person now, you might have like a 15% chance of winning. So like, good luck, but it might be in your best interest to go, knock out some of their stuff and get better. And I don't know, I like that. I like the noticeable change I feel in my character. Like every time I get an agility orb, like, oh, I'm jumping a little higher and faster. I go around punching people. Like there's just incentive to do those things because the improvements come often enough and like feel tangible enough to make everything you do feel rewarding. And granted, since I've not played Crackdown 1, or at least not like a ton of Crackdown 1, but I played enough Crackdown 1 I could copy and paste everything I just said to that game. So again, this isn't like new. So on one hand, you could crap on Crackdown 3 for like, oh, it's just doing Crackdown 1 again. But I guess I'm in a unique position of this being mostly new to me, I guess. So I would love to know, or I guess, like if you've played those first games, maybe this won't have that same kind of impact. But it's just, I think this game is kind of an interesting reminder of how like time and place can affect your perception of a video game. Like some games might be better or some games might be worse because of when you're playing it and kind of what mood you're in, um, regardless of the actual quality of the game objectively. I've played a lot of like critically acclaimed games that maybe didn't grab me for a bit just because I wasn't necessarily in a mood for what it was offering. Even though what it was doing was great, I just wasn't in the mood at that time for that style of game. Crackdown 3, I guess subconsciously I was in the mood for that style of game where those 2 hours that told you I wanted to play to get a feel for it turned into like half a day, like legit nonstop. And I don't do that very often with games. Especially as I've gotten older, I feel like my attention span has decreased to where like I can only play some games, for maybe like an hour or two at a time before I'm wanting to move on to a different thing. With exceptions, like Resident Evil Remake is one I can just keep playing for hours straight because I just that loop is compelling to me. And Crackdown has that compelling loop too, where it's like, oh man, I'm having fun just jumping around and just doing completely goofy superhero stuff and just blowing stuff up and just checking my brain at the door, basically. Like that's what this game has let me do. It's kind of like turn off my critical thinking brain to a degree. I can never do that completely, especially at this stage. Like I've reviewed too many video games to where I don't think I can ever turn that part of my brain off. But I'm having fun just throwing cars and grenades at things. And like, I'm recognizing like, yeah, this isn't entirely, fantastic. Like it's good and it's functional and it works. But you know, like I'll see things like, oh, I wish the shooting was a little bit better. And I guess it technically will get better if I just keep increasing my shooting. And sometimes the controls can be a little bit jittery when I'm platforming. Like I feel like I'll just like, I don't know, like I'll be slipping off of things somehow. But I'm having fun. Like it's one of the things where like I can't deny that I'm having a really good time with this game. So I guess like I'm in the minority at the moment of people that really enjoy Crackdown 3. And we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll get sick of this crap once I get even further. Like I've unlocked or at least visited about half of the map so far, and I've killed 3 or 4 of the bosses. But I spent I spent one sitting just clearing out one particular like boss's like his what do you call him? Like his business, I guess. Like his little things that he was doing. Like he was the machine guy and he had like the factory. I just spent an entire like time. I dedicated like an hour just clearing through all his stuff. Like I didn't even want to do any other thing. I didn't get bored because doing it. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna blow up all his machines because it's fun. And at one point I even just put on a podcast. I was like, oh man, I'm having a great time. But like, you know what would make this better? It's like a good podcast because I don't really necessarily care all that much about the story. Like it's there and it's goofy and it's dumb, but like I can take it or leave it, frankly. And I was having as much fun with that. I was like, oh man, this is actually a fun podcast game. I can check my brain at the door even further and listen to I was listening to like a Bigfoot podcast because Bigfoot's fascinating. Don't you tell me otherwise. And we're just going around just throwing cars off of buildings at people and stuff. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to playing more of it. It runs fine on the X. I don't have anything else to play it on, like PC. I mean, I technically own it for PC because, you know, whatever they call it, if you get Microsoft first party, you get it on PC. But I don't have a gaming PC, so can't compare it. But I think the game looks nice. Like it's got that kind of like a cleaner version of that cel shaded look. I think the city looks cool. It's not the most engaging open world at all. It's very much just a city with just random people walking around that you can just run over like they're fodder. But I think it looks aesthetically cool. It's just like a cool future vibe. It's got like, it's vibrant, especially during the daytime. It's cool colors. Like it just looks like a fun little, almost like a comic strip that I'm just jumping around in. So yeah, I'm surprised, frankly, that I'm having fun with this. Like I've said, I want to play more of it. I might be having the most pure fun I've had with any video game that I'm currently playing with this, with the exception of Apex Legends, which, let's jump right into that again. Still playing that. I played with old Hologram Dream, like I said last week. Her and I Played for like a full night a few days ago, like a Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. And that was a fun little trip. If you're listening, shout out, Angelina. It was a great time. It was interesting too because she, I believe she's not much of a console gamer. She's more of a PC gamer. So dual stick shooter controls were not her forte. She's more into mouse and keyboard. So kind of watching her adapt to that in real time in the heat of the moment was both humorous and just kind of fascinating. I always like learning and seeing how people play games, just how they react to things and just their own little kind of quirks with video games that just interest me for some reason. But yeah, we were just running around squadding up, didn't win anything, got our asses handed to us most of the time, which is fine because we were just BSing anyway. That game's a lot of fun just to BS with. And then I've also been playing with 2 other friends, even just a night ago, and came in second place a couple times, still chasing that elusive first win, at least with that particular friend group. I've only won one time in general, but still want to get that one with those 2 guys. And yeah, that game's still fun. I'm still learning things about the game that I didn't even know. Like, I just found out, and some of you might laugh at me for this if you play this game, like obsessively, but those red balloons, I didn't realize that you could zip line up those and it would basically give you a new launch. Like you can, like when you jump in the beginning of the game, if you zip up those red balloons that are around the map, you get to do that again, basically, and basically like kind of travel to a new area of the map. Like, you don't go as high as you do when you jump out, but it basically lets you go into that like drop stake, like you got the thrusters on your jet, and you can cover like a wide swath of ground pretty quickly. I never knew that. I always thought they were either there just for show. I remember when I was playing with randos, I tried to fly into them as the jump master, which I'm sure my team appreciated. But yeah, I didn't know that. There's a lot of little things in that game that, because the game doesn't really teach you any of that kind of nuanced stuff. Like, you have the tutorial that teaches you the mechanics and shooting and all that stuff. But in terms of just things that you interact with on the map, that's up to you to discover. And I kind of like that there's still things that I'm finding out just by either experimenting or just talking to friends and be like, wait, you what? You can do that? I didn't know that. And I'm looking forward to finding out more things like that because I'm not slowing down in that game anytime soon. It's arguably my favorite game of the year so far, perhaps. It might be neck to neck with Resident Evil 2 Remake, but I'm having way more fun with this than I ever imagined I would. And once again, kudos to Respawn for creating a free-to-play game that is this polished and this unique. A Tale of Gaming. Hey y'all! So for this new segment, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to be sharing a video game related story from my life. You can think of it as kind of the spiritual successor to the Valentine's Day episode where I talked about my experience playing Okami and trying to teach Okami to my ex-girlfriend way back not long after high school. For this first official installment, I'm going to share the story about my very first video game hardware that I ever bought with my own money. So let's take a trip back to 2004. I'm 16 years old. I just got my first job working as a bag boy at Albertsons. In case you don't know what Albertsons is, it was just a grocery store. They used to be around Florida. They've kind of gone away. I don't even know if they still exist anymore, honestly. But yep, as a sophomore after school, worked at Albertsons, stayed there for about 2.5 years, pretty much from my sophomore year through graduation. And it felt great because I finally had my own money. I could buy whatever I want. And that was kind of that was also the edict of my mom, was like, now that you got money, I'll still help you buy big stuff and that things, but other than that, you do what you want, it's your money. I was like, great. The only thing I really want to do is buy video games for the most part. And this was around the time that the PlayStation Portable was on the horizon. The PSP, Sony's first handheld device, and my god, the first time I saw that thing in a magazine, I about just lost my mind. I defecated on myself. My head spun a full 360 degrees. My neck still hurts from that. I just could not believe that somehow, through the combination of magic and science, you could get PlayStation graphics on a handheld device. Today, that might seem ridiculous, especially if you're a bit younger, but back in the day, that was a huge deal. It's like, because most handheld devices, which by most, I mean pretty much just Nintendo, because they were the only ones doing it pretty much, or at least doing it successfully, Engage, you would get at best like 16-bit graphics. So for this to be like this premium device, this big, nice screen, and they're showing footage of like Twisted Metal and stuff going on it. It ran disc, which also blew my mind. It's like, whoa, they got like tiny little discs. Like they're even smaller than a GameCube disc. UMDs, oh my god, like this is gonna be the future. Again, that's hilarious to think about in hindsight. But I saw the PSP and I was immediately like, I married it already. I was like, I have to have that thing. And now I have money. I'm gonna save up for this thing. And that's what I did. I worked my ass off, bagging those groceries, the world's best bagger. I put the cold stuff with the cold stuff. I don't make the bags too heavy. The cereal boxes all matched up. The bags never stretched. Just the best in the world at what I did. And when pre-orders finally opened up, I jumped right on it. It's the first video game, anything actually, gamer hardware that I ever pre-ordered and paid off along the way. And the other reason I was excited is that it was filling a void because the last handheld device I had was the original Game Boy Advance. And I didn't have it for long because I got it for a birthday a few years prior. And I also got a copy of Pokemon Gold. This is still when I was very much into Pokemon. And then maybe a month or two into owning the dumb thing, I took it camping with me as part of the Boy Scouts. And it was stolen. Someone jacked my GBA, and worse, my copy of Pokemon Gold was inside. And to this day, I don't know what happened to it. I remember having it in my tent and leaving to go do Boy Scout things, and then came back and it was gone. And I didn't really, if I remember correctly, I never really told anyone that I had it, or I never played it around camp, because it was like not long after getting to the camp. So I don't know. I don't know, maybe a bear took it. Maybe there's a raccoon somewhere that's just made a nest out of a Game Boy Advance. Do raccoons make nests? Where do raccoons live, actually? You ever wonder that? Like, where do they go when it's not nighttime? Do they sleep like in trees, or do they live underground? That's a great question. Somebody tell me, what do raccoons do when they're not destroying your trash cans? But yeah, saved them my money, and then that fateful day came. I believe it was March 24th. 2005, the launch of the PSP. I strolled up into EB Games, back when EB Games was a thing, and I said, "Hello, fine sir, I'm the gentleman that had been paying all of the money, the hundreds of dollars, to get this portable PlayStation. I would like it now." And then I slammed my fist on the table. And the incredibly impressed store clerk gave me my promised product, and my god, it felt so good. It felt so good. Because not only did I get this now mythical item that I've been following for months and months and months obsessively, but I'd done it with my own money. I didn't owe anyone anything. I earned this, which means I had every right to rub it in people's faces. And that's kind of what I did. I took my PSP everywhere, and I made it a point to do so in public as much as possible. I got, the launch games that I got were Twisted Metal Head On, which is, I think, one of the most underrated Twisted Metal games. I'm a big Twisted Metal fan, and that game was a bit of a return to form, or at least return to kind of the style of 2. I did enjoy Twisted Metal Black quite a bit. I also got, I believe Luminous was a launch game? I know I had Luminous was one of my very first games, so I can't remember if it was a launch game or shortly thereafter, but I had Luminous and played the bejesus out of that. And I let people know that I had one. I would sit by people and just play it, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, is that PlayStation graphics on a handheld?" And I'd turn around and say, "Why, yes it is." Yes, it is. You are absolutely correct. Oh, look at that. That's Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal. Look how I'm blowing up these other cars. Look at the particle effects. Do you know what those are? You probably don't, because you're not smart about video games like I am. Nor are you as rich as I am, because I could afford this luxury item, the PSP. But as insufferable as I was, the thing that really drove people insane, probably, is the free copy of Spider-Man 2 that came with my PSP. From what I understand, the first few batches, or the first batches of the launch PSPs came with a free movie bundled with it. I got Spider-Man 2. I don't know if it was only Spider-Man 2 that people got, or there might have been one other one. But I got Spider-Man, and that was just the icing on top, because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I probably stated this on previous episodes, I don't know, but Spider-Man has been my favorite superhero since forever, basically as long as I can remember. And I love Spider-Man 2. That's probably still the best Spider-Man movie ever, though Into the Spider-Verse might be right there with it. And this was not long after the movie released on DVD. And I was like, oh my god, like, I can watch Spider-Man 2, this amazing film, in the palm of my hands. And again, this is during a time, this is several years before smartphones, so like video playback on any sort of handheld device that wasn't like a camcorder or something like that. Remember camcorders, guys? Do they still make those? Anyways, was a novelty. This is still the generation of flip phones with actual buttons on them, guys. So that was actually, now that I think about it, that was the first time I'd ever had any sort of like handheld video playing device. So I, once again, made it a point to watch Spider-Man 2 on PSP as much as humanly possible. Like, I'm not kidding. I watched that movie to completion. God, within that first month of owning the thing, like, I had to have been like 15 times, maybe? Something like that? Like, I'm not exaggerating. Which I've never done anything like that for any movie. And again, I made it a point to do it around people. Like, I remember taking the PSP on a plane for a trip, again with Boy Scouts. This time it was not stolen. But sitting on the plane with friends and just casually being like, I think I'll watch the Spider-Man 2 now. And then just pulling out my PSP from my bag and firing it on, and then like my friends that were near me were like, whoa, you got the PSP? And I said, yes, that is true. Your eyes do not deceive you. This is the PlayStation Portable. And yes, that is indeed Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker in the palm of my hands. Look at this. I'm holding Dr. Octopus, all 8 arms right here on this tiny screen, and it looks phenomenal. Would you like to hold it? Make sure you put on gloves first before I hand this to you. I don't want your commoner germs on my fancy pants device. I watched so much Spider-Man 2. It got to the point where I memorized every line of dialogue in the entire movie in sequence. And I eventually, as with anything, I got tired of it. And there was a little period where I could not watch Spider-Man 2. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't even know if I've seen the movie in full, like from beginning to end, since around that time. I might be forgetting an instance, but outside of looking up random clips and stuff like that, that period might have been the last time I sat down and just watched Spider-Man 2 from start to finish. So basically, the PSP turned me into an insufferable prick. Well, maybe not that bad. I was insufferable. A prick? You'll have to ask the people that were around me during this time. It's probably the only time in my life that I can recall that I ever became like a real show-off, especially when it comes to like physical possessions. Like I've owned bigger, better things, but I don't really talk about it or care to. Just something about that PSP, I think again, is because it was the first thing I ever bought with my own money. I wanted to let the world know of my accomplishment, like, hey, I did this. Like, I need someone to share this with, and this is the only way I know how to do so, by being an annoying brat. Hey, have you seen Spider-Man 2? I can show it to you real quick. But the PSP, as up and down its history was, it never had the greatest library in the world, though it did have there are some gems on that thing. And as much as that little analog stick, that nub was just mostly ineffectual. It always holds a special place in my heart for being the first video game platform I ever bought. And I still have one somewhere, not the original. The original broke down the line, thanks to either my brother or a friend. I'm not sure which one, but I know it was one of them. And then I eventually bought the Star Wars Battlefront PSP, the white one that's got Darth Vader on it. That's the one I've had for years and the one I still have. Still works. I should go dig that up because I still have that copy of Spider-Man 2 in a box somewhere. Who knows, maybe one day, just for fun, I'll take another plane ride. I'm going to PAX East later this year. Maybe I'll bring that with me and resurrect old posh Marcus and share the joys of watching video and playing Twisted Metal on a handheld with the unfortunate souls stuck sitting next to me. 1 month later. Hello, sir. Can I interest you in an antique device? We used to call it the PlayStation Portable. It was the first device of its kind that played PlayStation games on a portable screen. Unbelievable, right? Sure, you could do it on your phone, but why not do it here with buttons? Look at this screen. Let me just show you. Have you played Luminous? It's like Tetris, but with music. Look at the blocks. Look at how the stage changes. Can I interest you in some Spider-Man 2? It's got Tobey Maguire. Look at it. Kirsten Dunst. Her hair is so red and vibrant in this.
My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass. I'm about taking names. And we're about making games.
A bit of news this week, some big news, in that Nintendo of America president, one Reggie Fils-Aime, is retiring. After 15 years at Nintendo of America, which I believe 13 of them he spent as the president and the COO, he is calling it quits, stepping down, riding out to sunset. And taking his spot will be one Doug Bowser, which is his real name. Literally his last name is Bowser, spelled the same way and everything, who has currently been the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. He's been at Nintendo for the last, I want to say like 4 years now, something like that, maybe 5 years. And he's appeared on he's appeared on a few like events and stuff like that. Seems like a cool dude. I mean, how could you not with a name like Bowser? Or I guess maybe that would make you less of a cool dude because Bowser's not a cool dude. Or he can be sometimes. But anyways, yeah, Reggie's done. Wow, I remember seeing the news thing. I got a notification on my phone and reading that and just literally just being taken aback. Like, whoa. Like, what? Just kind of, it's so sudden, I guess. I mean, we wouldn't know what the lead up to this would be in general, but it feels weird. It's the end of an era. I mean, Reggie's been there for so long, and he's honestly, I want to say, one of the first Nintendo executives that I ever kind of knew, even though I grew up with Nintendo. I've had Nintendo stuff since the NES, but as a kid, I didn't know executive people anywhere. I didn't know who ran PlayStation for the most part or any of that stuff. And so when Reggie became Reggie, when he first was introduced in the early 2000s, that's when I was a bit older and following like the industry a bit more as like an industry and not just game by game. And he was one of the first guys I can remember just like memorizing, I guess, or like he stood up like, okay, yeah, that guy, he works for Nintendo. I know him because he's the guy that comes out and talks about taking names and kicking ass. And he seems pretty cool.
Nihon no Minisan, Konnichiwa, Nintendo Obu America no Reggie des.
First, we can all feel better about my job security after hearing Reggie's Japanese.
I was going to have Bill Trinan introduce this, but he's been so busy talking up his Japanese skills that I decided he must want to spend more time in Japan. So that's where I've sent him. It'll be a while before he comes back.
I've always liked Reggie. I've always enjoyed him as a personality. I've also enjoyed how self-aware he was of like his own kind of meme-ness. like the My Body Is Ready stuff and whatnot. Like, he always seemed to take that in stride and just kind of revel in it, even with all the different just jokey things that he's done and like different video presentations and all that. There was the, like, I forgot what it was. I think it was for the Wii U when he had the video where he's in a meeting and he's got the sunglasses and he like takes them off and zaps somebody from across the room. And of course, like the robot chicken stuff, the one E3, and the puppet stuff, the other E3. He's always seemed like a guy that was not afraid to make fun of himself.
We need to get a move on with this Nintendo Direct.
But this is an elevator.
Yes, I have that power. You cannot escape me, Bill.
And also, he always struck me as a guy that just genuinely loved games, which he does. But it never seemed fake. Like when he talked about games and what he was playing, it always you could just tell when someone has like real excitement for something and real passion for what they're doing. And I've always felt that with Reggie.
I'm leveling up in Smash Run, so next time won't be so fun for you. Yeah, we'll settle this. Not my problem. Okay, thanks, and goodbye.
I've never had the opportunity to meet him, unfortunately. I almost did at this past E3 where I was walking down one of the concourse halls, and Reggie came flanked with his like Nintendo like goon squad. It was like his handlers, his shield, whatever you want to call him. And I remember seeing him and just like, just kind of the same way you when you ever see someone that you're used to seeing on like a screen or something for the first time, like, whoa, like that's Reggie Fils-Aime. Like holy crap. Like I've gone to so many events, but I've never actually seen Reggie in person. And like wanting to go up to him and, like say hi or something, but he was surrounded by so many people. And I was like, okay, if I go up there, am I going to get tased or tackled or something? Like, how do I do this? And so what I decided to do was that kind of awkwardly follow him from behind and see if I could find an opening, or at the very least try to get a picture just to prove like, hey, like I took a picture of Reggie. Isn't that neat? But then it was the matter of how do I do this without looking really awkward and like obvious? Because like, the Concourse is obviously full of people, and like I can't just like I need to keep pace with him because he was walking very fast. He's a very busy man. He's got places to go. And so like I was like, oh man, like he's walking faster than I am, and I can't. The only way I'm going to be able to keep up is if I almost break into like a slow jog, but I can't do that because there's a bunch of people around, and going to run into them. And I also just want to look weird, like why is this guy just jogging, trying to take a picture with his phone of Reggie Fils-Aime? So I was trying to figure out how to make all that work and trying to keep alongside him, like I'm like walking parallel to him. And I got a few pictures, but none that were really good. I got like a picture of like the back of him, but yeah, that's the closest I've ever come to any like physical interaction with Reggie Fils-Aime. But it's gonna be weird. It's really gonna be weird now. Like Nintendo is in terms of the public facing figures, it's that was one of the big three. It was him, then the late president Satoru Iwata, and Shigeru Miyamoto, who is now the last one left. And you don't really see Miyamoto often anymore, which makes sense. You kind of don't see him unless he's got something like one of his babies are about to be announced. But now that Mario and Zelda have been out in the wild and there's no new Pikmin that's been announced yet, Star Fox came. There's nothing for Miyamoto to kind of trot out and show off. So he's kind of been put back in the closet, I guess, so to speak.
Come on, Reggie, give us Mother 3!
How about this instead?
So now it's just going to be, Doug Bowser, who I wonder if he's going to just straight up just be the new Reggie, not just in job title, but will he be appearing in all the directs now? I would imagine so, because you would have, someone's got to fill those shoes, right? So maybe we'll be seeing more of him now. But yeah, it's going to be different. I still don't know the new or the current president of Nintendo Japan, which I guess would be the president of Nintendo just in general. I don't know his name. I remember the interim president that took power after Iwata. It was like Kimishima, I believe is his name. But he was always just the interim president. It just lasted for like a year or however long it was. And I know the new guy is like younger, but I still have not yet memorized his name. And I'm trying to remember. I don't think he's shown up in any of like directs yet. It's been the one guy whose name I don't remember also, and I'm not even entirely clear on what his position is. If he's a developer or just a Nintendo executive, but the gentleman that's shown up in all the recent directs that's been hosting them, like if you've been watching the directs, you probably know who I'm talking about. The one Japanese guy. I don't know his name either. So I'm kind of going back to Nintendo kind of having some anonymous faces now that 2 of the big 3 are done. So that's a little sad, but I hope we can kind of get back to having these guys be as personable and charismatic as Iwata and as Reggie definitely was. It feels weird saying was because it sounds like Reggie's dead, but he's not. His own words, he retired in good health. He's just wants to spend more time with his family and friends, which is absolutely respectable. He's got to go play more Animal Crossing and talk about how the TV is shaped like an apple, all that good stuff.
Here's a TV that looks like an apple.
I'm just wondering what he does next, because I was like, I assume he's retiring. Like, at first I thought, oh, is he just leaving Nintendo, but he's still going to work in the industry? But it's sounding like he's just done. Like, he is retiring from just work. Which, I mean, I'm sure he has the money to do so, which is awesome. But I hope we see Reggie pop up now and again, maybe as a surprise guest at, like, a Nintendo World Championship. He should maybe be, like, the final boss for like whoever makes it to the finals. Like he just comes from like behind a sliding double doors with like smoke and just this dark, tall, imposing silhouette. And then all of a sudden they show the light and you just see his big smiling face and he just says, "My body is ready." Unfortunately, my body was not ready for Reggie to leave us just yet. But you know what? Best wishes, Reggie, and whatever it is you decide to do, whoever's ass you decide to kick, and whatever names you decide to take. Have fun, dude. Totally deserve it. And you will definitely be missed.
Hello, everyone.
Reggie!
I realized something when I was training with all of those classic games. Nintendo's great. I really had the best job in the world.
I will remember you more so than the Wii U. Don't let your life pass you by. Your body is still ready. Remember that time you turned into Falco? Yeah, that was kind of weird, but I'm still sad to see you go. Clearly I first saw you smiling on that stage. Want to feel your warmth upon me. What? It's time to turn the page. Your body's ready for us. Reggie Fils-Aime. Ours weren't ready for this. Reggie Fils-Aime. You took our names and kicked some ass. We still wait for Mother 3. Every day that passes brings me one step closer to seeing you again. Like at a convention or something. I miss you, Reg. And we can't stop. 'Cause we won't stop. And that's the show, folks. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, you can do so at MarcusStewart7. That is the number 7. Hit me up about your thoughts on the show. Tell me the games that you're playing, and any other gaming thing that tickles your fancy. You can also keep up with me on Screen Rant, writing up some video game news there. And you can listen to me on other podcasts, such as our 2 Dungeons & Dragons live plays, hosted by Jack Gardner, co-host of the Best Games Period podcast. The first show is We Wanted Adventurers, where I play an eccentric and over-the-top bard on a grand adventure with 2 other companions, just a real band of misfits, collecting ancient artifacts, battling demons, saving estranged siblings, all kinds of just nonsense. Speaking of nonsense is the other show, the sister campaign, Dragon Guard. In that one, I play Tabaxi, which is like a cat man, ranger, gruff on the outside, lovable on the inside, teaming up with an even bigger just band of just can't get right companions. We are just the worst. Someone described it as being like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but Dungeons & Dragons, which about sums it up. Nothing ever goes right, and we're all kind of idiots. But it's a hilarious show, and you can check out both of those on SoundCloud, as well as extralife.com and Libsyn. Just search for We Wanted Adventurers or Dragon Guard. I think on SoundCloud it might be under the Best Games Period banner, so check either that, or just type in We Wanted Adventurers and or Dragon Guard. If you love Dungeons & Dragons, you'll definitely be entertained. So until next week, guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, and adios.